The smell of buttered lobster was thick enough to taste. I was on my knees, scrubbing a dark coffee stain out of the plush gray carpet of the executive boardroom. My knees ached, but I kept my head down. The heavy oak doors swung open, and the sound of expensive leather shoes clicked against the floor. Corbett, the CEO of Aerotech, walked in with the board of directors trailing behind him like lost puppies. He stopped mid-sentence. He looked at his polished shoe, then down at me. With a casual flick of his foot, he kicked my plastic cleaning bucket over. Dirty, gray water splashed across the carpet and soaked into the knees of my blue uniform. The room went silent. "Janitors eat outside, Isolde," he sneered, pointing a manicured finger toward the service exit. "You're ruining the appetite of people who actually matter. Get out." The board members chuckled nervously. I didn't flinch. I didn't apologize. I stood up slowly, my joints popping in the silence. I wiped my wet hands on my apron, reached into my pocket, and pulled out my cracked smartphone. I opened the email draft I had prepared a week ago. I pressed Execute Transfer. A green notification popped up instantly. Transaction complete. Majority shareholder status confirmed. I looked Corbett dead in the eye. "I prefer eating inside, actually, and since I own the table now, you can leave." My name is Isolde. If you Googled me 3 years ago, you would have seen my face on the cover of every tech magazine in the country. I sold my software company, Matrix Systems, for $2 billion. I had everything, the houses, the cars, and the private jets. But I also had a lot of time and a nagging feeling that I wasn't done yet. 6 months ago, I was bored of retirement. I was tired of golf and charity galas. I started looking for a new project. That was when I found Aerotech. It was a hardware startup with incredible potential, but the financial reports didn't make sense. They were bleeding money, yet the product was revolutionary. I wanted to invest, but I suspected bad leadership. If I had walked in as a billionaire investor, they would have put on a show for me. They would have hidden the cracks. So I didn't send auditors in suits. I applied for the open janitorial position. People ignore janitors. We are invisible. We are furniture. And invisibility is the absolute best way to see the truth. I traded my tailored suits for a polyester uniform, tied my hair back, and started scrubbing floors to save a company. I spent my days emptying trash cans and listening. It is amazing what people say when they think no one is there. I learned very quickly that Corbett was not a genius. He was a fraud. He had inherited the company from his father, a brilliant man who had actually built things. Corbett only knew how to destroy them. He screamed at the engineers for things he didn't understand. He cut the safety budgets for the server rooms to pay for his office renovations. I saw invoices for client retention, trips to Las Vegas, that cost more than the annual salary of the entire support staff. The atmosphere in the building was heavy. I saw the fear in the eyes of the receptionists and the developers. They walked on eggshells, afraid that one wrong look would get them fired. They loved the product they were building, but the toxicity of the leadership was suffocating them. Every day, I mopped the hallways and watched the potential of Aerotech being strangled by one man's ego. I knew I had to do something, but I needed to understand the technical problems first. That was when I found the basement. The basement server room was cold and hummed with the sound of cooling fans. This was where Rafferty worked. He was a young engineer, brilliant but quiet. He was the only person in the entire building who treated me like a human being. On my first week, he saw me eating a granola bar on the stairs. He sat down next to me and offered me half of his turkey sandwich. We didn't talk much, but the gesture meant everything. One night, I was mopping the concrete floor near his desk. Rafferty had his head in his hands. He was crying softly. On his screen, endless lines of red error codes were scrolling. He went to the bathroom to splash water on his face. I put down my mop. I checked the hallway. Then I sat at his terminal. I'm a coder, not a cleaner. I saw the syntax error in seconds. I typed the fix rapidly, compiled the code, and cleared the screen. When Rafferty came back, the screen was green. He stared at it, bewildered. He looked at me, but I was already back in the corner, wringing out my mop. He thought it was a miracle. I just kept scrubbing. The next morning, the energy in the office was different. Rafferty had a meeting with the board to present the fix. It was the solution that would save a major contract with the government. I lingered outside the glass doors of the conference room, pretending to polish the handle. Rafferty stood up, looking nervous but proud. He began to explain the code. Suddenly, Corbett slammed his hand on the table. "Enough," Corbett barked. "Good job implementing my suggestions, Rafferty. I'm glad you finally understood what I told you to do last week." My blood boiled. Corbett was taking full credit for the code I wrote and Rafferty implemented. Rafferty stammered, trying to speak up. "But sir, the logs show." "Are you calling me a liar?" Corbett stood up, looming over him. "I can fire you and replace you with an intern by noon. Sit down and shut up." Rafferty slumped in his chair, defeated. I gripped my mop handle so hard my knuckles turned white. The injustice burned in my chest. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about decency. I knew then that I couldn't just buy the company. I had to destroy Corbett. Corbett was desperate for cash. The client retention, trips, and the expensive office furniture had drained the reserves. The company was weeks away from payroll failure. He was frantically courting a mysterious holding company called Nebula Group for a complete buyout. He didn't know Nebula Group was my family office. He didn't know that the tough negotiators on the other end of the emails were acting on my direct orders. My lawyer, Thayer, had been stalling him for weeks, waiting for my signal. I listened to Corbett on the phone in his office while I emptied his shredder. "They're a big corporate entity," he bragged to his CFO. "They don't know the local market. I can get them to pay double what this place is worth. I'll take the cash and leave the mess to them." He laughed, sipping his scotch. He thought he was manipulating a faceless, stupid corporation. He had no idea the decision-maker holding his fate was the woman standing 5 feet away, putting a fresh plastic liner in his trash can. The Nebula representatives, Thayer and his team, were scheduled to visit for an inspection. Corbett went into a panic. He ordered a deep clean of the entire facility. He wanted the place to look sparkling, to hide the rot underneath. He worked me and the other 2 cleaning staff for 14 hours straight. We scrubbed baseboards with toothbrushes. We polished the ceiling tiles. He refused to pay overtime, claiming it was part of the job description. Around midnight, my back was screaming in pain. I sat down on a folding chair in the break room to drink a glass of water. Corbett walked in. He checked his watch and scowled. "Laziness is a disease, Isolde," he said, his voice dripping with disgust. "You think the world owes you a break? That mindset is why you are holding a mop and I am holding a glass of 20-year-old scotch. Get back to work. I'm docking your pay for this hour." I stood up. I didn't argue. I just looked at him and thought about the bank transfer I was about to make. "Understood, sir," I said quietly. A few days later, while cleaning the printer room, I found a document Corbett had left on the glass. He was careless because he was arrogant. It was a draft agreement with a competitor. I read it quickly. It was worse than I thought. Corbett wasn't just planning to sell to Nebula, he was double-dealing. He was planning to sell the company's patent rights to a rival firm separately, strip the physical assets, and bankrupt the main entity before Nebula took over. He called it the Golden Parachute. It would leave the employees with nothing, no jobs, no severance, no future. He planned to blame the failure on the engineering team, specifically citing incompetence by people like Rafferty. I took a picture of the document with my phone. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage. I needed to act fast. If he signed that patent deal, the company would be a hollow shell. I couldn't just buy the company anymore. I had to trap him before he could sign anything else. I texted Thayer, "Move the timeline up. Now." I instructed Thayer to send a new contract offer immediately. It was an aggressive move, a hostile injection of capital. The terms were complex. It gave Nebula Group 51% controlling interest in exchange for immediately saving the company from bankruptcy. It was a lifeline, and Corbett was drowning. Thayer made sure the offer expired in 24 hours. Corbett was so blinded by the dollar signs and his own desperation that he didn't read the fine print. The fine print contained a clause about immediate leadership restructuring upon transfer of funds. It meant the new owner could fire the CEO on the spot. Corbett didn't check. He just saw the millions that would hit his account. He scheduled the signing for the board lunch, the very scene where this story began. He wanted an audience for his victory. He ordered catered lobster. He invited the entire board. He wanted to show them how he had saved the company. He had no idea he was setting the stage for his own execution. The morning of the lunch, the main server crashed. It was a critical failure. The system overheated because the cooling budget had been cut. Corbett needed someone to blame, and fast. He couldn't let the board think it was his fault. I was in the server room, checking the temperature gauges when he stormed in. He saw me standing near the rack. "You," he screamed, his face red. "You bumped the cable, I saw you." "I didn't touch anything," I said calmly. "The fans are broken." "Liar!" He grabbed my arm and dragged me toward the door. "This illiterate janitor destroyed our mainframe," he yelled to the staff gathering in the hall. "She's clumsy and stupid." It was a lie, and everyone knew it, but it gave him the perfect excuse to fire me publicly during the lunch. He wanted to show strength to the board. He wanted to show he could make the hard decisions. He dragged me to the boardroom to make an example of me. We returned to the present moment. The boardroom was deadly silent. The smell of lobster was still heavy in the air. I had just told Corbett I owned the table. Corbett blinked. He looked at me, then at the board, and let out a harsh, barking laugh. "Security!" he yelled, his voice cracking slightly. "Get this delusional trash out of here. She's mentally unstable. She thinks she owns the company." 2 security guards stepped forward. I knew them. I knew their names were Mike and Sam. I knew Mike had a new baby and Sam was worried about his pension. They looked hesitant. "I wouldn't do that," I said. I held up my phone. I wasn't showing them my bank app anymore. I was FaceTiming Thayer. I walked over to the large flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. "Let's clear this up." I tapped the screen, connecting my phone via AirPlay to the room system. Thayer's face, crisp and professional in a high-end suit, appeared on the giant monitor. Thayer's voice filled the room, amplified by the surround sound speakers. "Actually, Mr. Corbett," Thayer said smoothly, "Isolde is not a janitor. She is the chairwoman of Nebula Group, and as of 30 seconds ago, the transaction has cleared. She is the majority owner of Aerotech. I would suggest you listen to her." The room went absolutely silent. You could hear a pin drop on the coffee-stained carpet. The board members froze. Corbett's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. The security guards, Mike and Sam, stopped in their tracks. They looked at Corbett, then at me, and stepped back to the wall. They crossed their arms. They weren't going to touch me. I looked at the board members. "You have all been complicit in the mismanagement of this firm, but right now, my focus is on him." I pointed at Corbett. Corbett looked at the screen, then at me. The color drained from his face, leaving him a pale, sweaty gray. The reality was crashing down on him, but his ego wouldn't let him accept it yet. Corbett let out a nervous chuckle. He looked around the room, seeking an ally. "Good joke," he stammered. "Very funny. Who put you up to this? Is this a union prank? Did Rafferty put you up to this?" He lunged forward, trying to grab my phone from my hand. I stepped back smoothly. "Sit down, Corbett," I said, my voice hard as steel. "We have a board meeting." "You can't be serious," he shouted. "Look at her. She's wearing a dirty uniform. She smells like bleach." "And you smell like desperation," I countered. I walked to the head of the table. The chair was high-backed leather. I sat down. The wet spot on my knee pressed against the expensive upholstery. I didn't care. I placed my cracked phone on the mahogany table. The board members, confused and terrified of the sudden power shift, looked at me. They didn't dare speak. I was still wearing my wet, dirty uniform, but I commanded the room. "Corbett," I said, "you are suspended pending an internal audit. Remove yourself from the premises immediately." He stared at me, his eyes bulging. "You can't suspend me. I built this." "You inherited this," I corrected. And then you broke it, now get out. He refused. He stood his ground, screaming that I was a fraud. That the transaction was fake. He threw a glass of water against the wall. It shattered. I looked at Mike and Sam. "Security," I said calmly. "Escort the trespasser out." Mike stepped forward with a smile I had never seen before. "Yes, ma'am," he said. They grabbed Corbett by the arms. He flailed, kicking and screaming. They held him tight, dragging him toward the door with a little too much enthusiasm. They had wanted to do this for years. As they hauled him out, his expensive shoes scuffed against the floor I had just cleaned. Once Corbett was gone, I stood up. "Meeting adjourned," I told the stunned board. "Don't go far." I walked out to the reception desk. "Lock the building," I told the receptionist. "No one in, no one out." I went to the PA system and called an emergency all-hands meeting in the main atrium. The employees gathered, looking terrified. They had heard the yelling. They thought the company was folding. I walked onto the small stage. I saw Rafferty in the back, looking pale. "My name is Isolde," I said into the microphone. "I own this place now." A murmur went through the crowd. "I know I look like the janitor, that's because I was, but I'm also the one who just bought 51% of the stock." I paused. "No one is getting fired today except the people who deserve it. Your jobs are safe. Your payroll is safe." I saw Rafferty's jaw drop to the floor. The relief in the room was palpable, a physical wave of tension breaking. I didn't have time to celebrate. I traded my mop for a laptop. I set up a war room in Corbett's office, sweeping his personal trinkets off the desk into a box. I called in my team of forensic accountants who had been waiting in a van down the street. We started digging. We found the consulting fees Corbett was paying himself. We found the falsified safety reports. The corruption was deep, but there was a problem. The drive containing the details of the offshore bank accounts, the money he had siphoned from the company, was encrypted. It was a standalone drive in his safe. We had the drive, but we didn't have the password. Without it, we couldn't recover the stolen millions needed to stabilize the company's cash flow immediately. The accountants tried to crack it, but it was military-grade encryption. We needed Corbett's key, and Corbett was currently sitting in the parking lot, likely calling his lawyers. Suddenly, my office door opened. It was Nella, the HR director. She looked like she was about to be sick. She was holding her phone. "He's calling me," she whispered. "Corbett." I motioned for her to sit. "Put it on speaker, but stay mute." We listened. Corbett was manic. "Nella, listen to me. If I go down, you go down. You signed those termination papers. You signed the budget approvals." I did what you told me," Nella stammered, unmuting the phone. "Doesn't matter," Corbett screamed. "I need you to go into the server room. There are backup hard drives in the safe. Physically destroy them. Smash them. Do it now, and I'll wire you $10,000. Nella looked at me, trembling. She was a good person who had been bullied into submission. She was torn. I nodded at her, offering silent support. Nella took a deep breath. She looked at the phone, then at me. She made a choice. "Mr. Corbett," she said, her voice shaking. "I can't get into the safe. You changed the combination." "I'm outside," he hissed. "I'm in my car. Come out to the back lot. I'll give you the code, but you have to promise to destroy them." I realized this was the opportunity. He was desperate and sloppy. I wrote on a notepad, "GO2HIM. Say you need the password to wipe them remotely." I showed it to Nella. She nodded. "Sir," she said, "I can't destroy them physically. There are too many people. But I can wipe them remotely if you give me the admin password." There was a silence on the line. "Fine," Corbett said. "Come out to the car. I need to see you face to face to know you aren't lying." I wired Nella with a microphone. She walked out to the back parking lot. I listened from the office, my heart pounding. Corbett was sitting in his Porsche, looking wild-eyed. He saw Nella and rolled down the window just an inch. He was paranoid. "What's the employee ID for the new janitor?" he asked. "We don't give IDs to contract staff," Nella said quickly. It was the right answer. He relaxed slightly. "Okay, the remote wipe password." He hesitated. It's the date I fired my father from the board. August 12th, 2015. 81,215. Pure narcissism. Even his passwords were about his ego. Got it, Nella said. I'll go do it now. Hurry, he yelled as she walked away. I typed the numbers into the encrypted drive on my desk. 81,215. The screen flashed green. Access granted. We had the evidence of embezzlement. We had the account numbers. We had everything. Corbett sat in his car, waiting for the servers to crash. They didn't. He realized he had been played. He peeled out of the parking lot. Within an hour, he called his high-priced lawyers. By the afternoon, I was served with a lawsuit. He was suing me for corporate espionage and identity fraud. He claimed I had lied on my employment application about my background, which technically I did. He managed to get an emergency court order to freeze the company accounts pending a hearing. He knew payroll was tomorrow. He wanted to starve us out. He wanted the employees to turn on me. He's playing dirty, Thayer said, looking at the court order. We can't pay the staff tomorrow. The accounts are locked. I looked out the window at the factory floor. The workers were already nervous. If their checks bounced, morale would collapse. Corbett would win the narrative. The news spread fast. Corbett went on a local news station, painting me as a crazy imposter destroying a legacy company. The staff began to panic. People were gathering in the hallways, whispering. I didn't hide in the office. I walked straight onto the factory floor. I climbed onto a shipping crate so everyone could see me. The company accounts are frozen, I shouted. The murmuring turned into angry shouts. Corbett did this. He wants you to suffer so he can get his way. What about our rent? Someone yelled. I said the company accounts are frozen, I replied loudly. But my personal accounts aren't. I pulled a checkbook out of my pocket. It was my personal private banking book. I am writing a personal check for every single employee here for this month's salary, plus a 20% bonus for the stress. I spent the next 3 hours writing checks. I handed them out one by one, looking each person in the eye. I didn't just pay them, I bought their loyalty for life. Corbett was furious. His plan to starve the staff had failed. Now he tried to rally the shareholders. He called for an emergency vote of no confidence in my leadership. He cited my deceptive entry and lack of transparency. He sent letters to the old guard board members, his father's friends. He appealed to their sense of tradition. He told them that letting a janitor run the company was an insult to their dignity. He thought the board would side with one of them over an outsider. He organized the vote to take place in 2 days. He was confident. He thought he could charm the old men in the boardroom one last time. I let him do it. I needed him in the room one last time. I needed the police to know exactly where he would be. The day of the vote arrived. The boardroom was packed. Corbett walked in wearing a fresh suit, looking confident. He made a passionate speech about pedigree, order, and the natural way of things. We cannot let this charade continue, he said, gesturing to my empty chair. I stood up from the back of the room. I wasn't in a uniform this time. I was wearing a tailored black suit that cost more than his car. I walked to the front. Nice speech, I said, but before we vote, I want to show you something. I pressed a button. A video played on the screen. It wasn't the embezzlement evidence. It was a compilation of security footage I had gathered for 6 months. It showed Corbett mocking the board members behind their backs. It showed him calling the investors senile sheep. It showed him stealing their expensive wines from the reserve cabinet. It showed him laughing about how easy it was to manipulate them. The embezzlement didn't turn them. His disrespect toward them did. The room turned cold. Corbett stared at the screen, horrified. The board members were red with anger. They didn't care about the money as much as they cared about their pride. I call for a vote, the chairman said, glaring at Corbett. To remove Corbett from all association with Aerotech and to strip his severance package. Every hand went up. It was unanimous. You can't do this, Corbett screamed. I am the CEO. Not anymore, I said. I motioned to the back of the room. 2 police officers entered. We also have the bank logs, Corbett, the offshore accounts. That's grand larceny. The officers stepped forward and clicked the handcuffs onto his wrists. He looked at me, tears welling in his eyes. He looked small. I gave you a job, he yelled, his voice breaking. I gave you a chance. You gave me a mop, I replied coldly. I used it to clean up the trash. Corbett was led away in handcuffs, sobbing. The room was quiet, but it was a good quiet. It was the silence of a fresh start. The ending wasn't just about the money or the revenge. It was about setting things right. I promoted Rafferty to CTO the next day. He cried when I told him. We instituted a new policy. Every executive, including me, must spend 1 week a year working a floor job, cleaning, packing, or answering phones. No one is invisible anymore. A week later, I walked outside for lunch. I saw the bench where the janitors used to eat alone near the dumpster. I didn't go there. I went to the cafeteria. Rafferty and Nella were sitting at a table in the center of the room. I walked over with my tray. They smiled and pulled out a chair for me. We ate sandwiches together, laughing about the code updates. Janitors eat inside now, I said, taking a bite. The camera pans out on the new company sign hanging above the entrance, Phoenix Dynamics. We rose from the ashes, and we were burning brighter than ever.